to another episode here at GoRails. In this lesson, we're going to look at doing a bit of Ruby scripting to alleviate a little bit of headache in our workflow. So to kind of show you what I'm talking about here is, in my case, and maybe you have a similar situation, I have a number of repos that I deal with for work, and I always want to make sure that they're up to date and they have the latest changes on my local system. So in order to do that, typically what my workflow looks like for one repository is, let's say I want to go make sure pay is up to date, for example. So I'll cd into pay, and you can see here I'm now in the pay directory. I'm on the main branch, and now what I want to do is I want to say git fetch upstream, which real quick, let me list out my remotes here. So if I do git remote -v, we can see that I have two remotes set up. One is named origin, which points to my fork of the pay gem, and the other one is named upstream, which points to the actual pay gem repository. Okay, so with that out of the way, typically what I would do after I cd into the directory for a given project, I'll run git fetch upstream main. Okay, I'll let that run, and then I'll do git pull upstream main, right? And then finally, once I have all those changes and there's no conflicts and stuff, I'll just go ahead and do git push to origin, to my fork main. Okay, so as you can see here, it's a couple steps. It's not too involved, but it does take a little time. And then also I have to do this for 5 or 6 repositories, okay, that we deal with for work stuff here at GoRails. So currently I have to go into each directory and do these steps for each one, and that's kind of a headache. So what we're going to look at, again, like I mentioned in the beginning of this, is we're going to look at writing a Ruby script in order to do this for us. So let's get started. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change back into my code directory. Now my code directory lives at this path right here. Okay, so it's off of my home folder there, and there's code. And then all of these repositories that I'm speaking of all live inside of this code directory here. So, for example, here's GoRails, Hatchbox, some Jumpstart stuff, Noticed, and Pay right here. Okay. So to get started, let's make a new file for our script to live in. So I'll say touch repo sync .rb, or let me underscore this, reposync.rb. Okay, we'll touch that. Okay, now let's open that up inside of our editor here. All right, so we know the steps we need to take for a given repository that we want to sync and update. So let's write them down right here. So the first thing we want to do is we change into repo directory. The next thing we want to do is fetch. Then we want to pull, and then we want to push to origin, right? Okay, so these are our main steps here. So now we'll want to do these in a loop. So we want to loop through all the repositories that we need to update and perform all of these steps for each one. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to paste in this constant that I have here that points to an array of all the names of the repositories that I want to loop through. Okay, and now let's say repos.each. Let's start our loop here. We'll say do, and then let's just call our block variable here repo name. So now let's go ahead and grab all of our steps here and paste them inside the body of this block here, so that we can start filling them out with what to do. And maybe we want to also add a step here for maybe we'll say announce success. Alright, so to change into the repository directory, you might be wondering how we can do that via Ruby. Well, there's a class in Ruby called dir, and it has a changedir method, chdir, on it. And if we go look at that, here's the documentation for the dir class. Oops, I didn't mean to click there. If we go look in the methods down here, we'll see this class method for changedir. So it takes a string, and it can take a block as well. And now the cool thing about if you pass a block is that if you give it a block, it'll change into the directory that you pass as the string name here, as this argument here. It'll change into that directory, and then any code that lives inside the block will be executed in the context of that new directory. It'll shift that process into that directory, and then when the block exits, the process will be put back into its original starting point. Okay, it'll be restored. And this will be great for us since all of our repositories live inside of that code directory. We can simply go from our code directory We can change into each project directory, run our code in that block, and then when that block exits, we'll be back in our code directory. And then when we start the next loop of the next repository directory, it'll be able to find it from our code directory since they all are nested inside of that directory. So this will work great for us here. So let's go ahead and write that code now. Let's say dir.change dir, and then let's give it the repo name. Okay. And then now what we want to do is we want to pass it a block. So there's our block right there. And now just to see that what's happening is really true here. So let's do print working directory command here just before we change into the repo name. And maybe we should call that something else other than repo name. Maybe we should call that repo directory maybe. So I'm going to change that now. We'll say repo dir. I'll do the same thing here. Okay, so let's save this, and now over in this other terminal tab here, let's run our program here. So ruby reposync.rb. So okay, so you'll see now inside of our loop, the first thing that prints out. So we're inside of our loop right here. The first thing that prints out is this. We haven't changed directories yet at this point, so it prints out the current directory that we're in when we ran our program, which is our code directory, which is right. We see that reflected right here. So then we hit our change dir command. We in our loop here, the first directory being passed in is GoRails right here. So that's why when we hit this here, we see that we are in that directory. Then again, the block exits. We start the next iteration of our loop. We're put back into our code directory as we see here. So now we're hitting this again for the second time. And then we see hashbox v2 right here, which is indeed the second element inside of our array here, and that is being printed out right here. So, and if we look, onward, so forth and so forth, it just keeps doing the same thing. So it is in fact changing our directory for us, which is great. So let's remove those two things there. And now really what we want to do is we want to grab all these comments here, and we need to do these inside the block here. I'll clean that up a little bit. Let's get rid of this comment now that we're done with that. We're actually doing that. I think the code reads fine enough to remove that comment. So what I want to do first, actually, once we're in a project directory or a repo directory, I want to know what the current branch is. So what we can do to get that is we can make a variable, say current branch equals. Now what are we going to equal this to here? We need to run a system command in order to find out the current branch. So for example, if we go into GoRails right now, if we were to run git branch show current, we will see the current branch return back to us. So we want to run this command, but we need to do it from our Ruby script. So how can we do that? So we can actually run system commands in our Ruby scripts or programs two ways. We have this system method. So system, you can pass it a string, and it'll execute that command in a subshell. Now, what's important to note about this method is what it returns. So the system method returns true if the command gives a 0 exit status, meaning it was successful. False otherwise if it's a non-zero exit status. And it returns nil if the command execution fails. It also, this is a good thing to note, it also sets the error status in the global variable $? Okay, so you can see that if you look at that global variable there. Now, in our case, returning true, false, or nil is not ideal for us because we want to capture that output that was given back to us as we saw a moment ago. Over here, we got this output of main given back to us, so we want to capture that and we want to store that inside of our current branch variable here. So the other option, and this is the one we use for to achieve our goal of storing that branch, is the backticks. Okay, so in Ruby, if you use backticks and then put a command inside of those backticks, it'll run that command and it returns the standard output from running that command. It also, just like the system command, sets the global variable $? To the process status. That's what we're going to use in our case here, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's do backticks, and we'll say git branch show current. Okay, and now after we do that, let's print out current branch and just have a look at it. Okay, so save that. I'll go back over here and oops, let's get into our code directory. Okay, let's run our Ruby program now. So reposync.rb. So if we print it out now, we now see that we get all of the current branches for each of the given repositories, but they have this new line at the end of all those. We probably don't want that. So what we can do is we can go ahead and just after the closing backtick here, we can just go ahead and hit chomp, or call chomp rather, and chop that new line off, and there we go. So that's good. So we've got our current branch. We now want to do these other steps here, but I think before we start getting to the steps, maybe we should give ourselves some information about what we're doing here, okay? So I'm kind of thinking we should maybe print out a little message saying like updating, and then we could say repo dir, and then we can say we'll do current branch, close that, and then branch right here, okay? So now if we run our program, we should see, yep, each one being our little output messages here of saying what we're currently doing. So updating GoRails main branch, updating Hatchbox v2 master branch, so on and so on. So this is good. Now, real quick, I want to say this initial run of the program is going to expect that we adhere to certain expectations of the program, okay? So this program in its current state is going to require that we have an upstream remote and an origin remote. It's also going to require that we're on our main or master branch and not on some other branch that we're doing some work on, okay? So in that case, if we're on a different branch other than main or master, we're gonna, eventually we'll just print out a failure message for that and then move on to the next repository. Just to give ourselves some indication of like, oh, okay, everything worked, that one, we need to go, finish whatever we're doing, commit our changes on that other branch or stash them, and get over to our main branch before we can actually update. So those right now are going to be the limitations or expectations of this program. And in the next video where we start to take this script a little bit further, we'll handle different cases like that. But for right now, let's get something working so we have something that we can use to make our day-to-day activities a little bit smoother. All right, so that's pretty good. I think what I'm going to do, actually, I think I'm going to delete this out of here. I think I'm going to save it in a variable called update message. Okay, we'll do that. Oops. And then let's, right here, let's put update message, and you'll see why in a second. And then next, I want to put like a divider, kind of like an underline for this, kind of header message here. So we'll put our update message, and then let's put maybe an asterisk, or maybe you could do a bunch of equal signs if you want. Maybe we'll do equal signs. And then how many of those we want to do? Well, we want to do that we'll make it dynamic here. So whatever the length of the update message is, that's how many of those we'll print out. So now if we run our program here, we'll see that now we get the underlines, and they go the full length of whatever the update message is, which is kind of nice. All right, so now let's move on and let's do some fetching here. So let's say puts fetching, and now we actually need to perform that fetch. So again, since we'll probably want to use the output from running the fetch command, I'll use backticks here. So we'll say get fetch, and then we'll do upstream, and then we'll interpolate whatever current branch is. Okay, now let's run this and see what happens. Okay, so it seems like the fetching worked well, but what happens if we're not on a valid branch, for example, like I was mentioning a moment ago? So if we go into GoRails real quick, and I just made a silly little branch called foo. If we switch to foo, and then go back to our code directory and we run our program here, let's see what happens. So here we get this message that I couldn't find the remote ref foo. Now, looking at the output here, you may be wondering, how did this show up here? Or how did this show up here for any of these, for example? Because when we looked at the backtick command, it says, if we go back over to the Ruby docs here, it says it returns standard output from running a command in a subshell. So that's great that it returns this method returns the output from that command, but how is that showing up here? Because we're not printing that out right now. So what's interesting about this is actually that those messages that you are seeing being written here are actually not being written to standard out. They're being written to standard error. So when you're going through this process of running these git commands like this, the progress of the commands is actually written to standard error, not standard out. So we need to handle that in our code, because while it's nice to see that stuff, maybe we want to handle what is displayed and what isn't. So we need to also grab standard error as well here. How do we do that? Well, what we can do is, since we're just running, system commands here, we can redirect standard error to the same place as standard out. So right now we're capturing standard out, so we just need to make sure that standard error is also sent to the same place. So we can do that right here in the same line by saying 2 greater than and 1, like this. Okay, so now if we save this, if we were to rerun our program now we see none of that output that our get command is or would be producing from standard error, because we've captured that. We redirected standard error to the same place that standard out is going, and standard out is being captured or returned by the backtick method. So we're kind of capturing that and holding it for ourselves. So let's how about we save this in a variable so that we can use it later. So let's say something like fetch status equals this command, and then let's go ahead and just print out fetch status real quick. Okay, and let's run our program. Okay, so we see we're capturing, here's what we're capturing right here. We got the string. We'll also note that there's some new lines there. Here's this other one here that we captured, also has some new lines. Maybe we don't want those, so what we can do, again, is we can just call .chomp on the end of those. Let's save this and let's run it again. Okay, great. We've chopped all those new lines off, or at least the last one of the string. You see there's still one here. We won't worry about those right now. And also we could clean this all this extra space up too if we wanted down the road. For right now, I don't intend to show any of this output. I really want to only show any errors that may have popped up. Otherwise, let's just keep ourselves updated with what's going on in the program. All right, so now that we know that this fetch status will have that message in it if it fails there. Okay, so in the event that this command fails, or is unsuccessful rather, we want to show this message, and then we want to skip all the rest of these steps and go on to the next element in our iteration, the next repository directory. So the way we can do that is we can actually use the next keyword here. Now the next keyword, if you look at the documentation here, it says next accepts an argument that can be used as the result of the current block iteration. Okay, so we can use next combined with this fetch status here to show the error message to the user before we move on to the next element in the array here. So what I'll do to show this, I'll say next, and then if we just say fetch status here, it'll be returned from this iteration of the loop, but we won't actually see it printed out. So we can actually just say puts, and then I'm going to wrap fetch status in parentheses here, and then we only want to show this if the previous command is not successful or was not successful. So we can say unless, and then remember that both backticks and the system method will set that global variable, the $? to the status of running this command here. Okay, so what we can do here, we can say unless $?.success ? Like this. Okay, so now let's go back over here and let's run our program now. Okay, so we see that we tried to fetch and we got this fatal response here. How do we know that we're skipping anything else though in this block after that next call there? So let's just say puts did not skip. Okay, and now if we run our program now, we see that after we print out our error message here, we don't see the do not skip or did not skip like we did everywhere else. Okay, so we are, once we hit this next, we'll return this put statement here, and then we'll just go on to the next element in our array. All right, so that takes care of our fetch call, and let's go ahead and remove that comment, and let's move on to pull. So the rest of this is going to be pretty much the same for this initial run of implementing this code. So I'm just going to copy this down. I'll change what this message says here. So we'll say pulling, okay, and then we'll change this to say pull status, okay, and then again we don't want to fetch now, we want to run pull. We want to pull from upstream the current branch. That's correct. We still want to redirect both standard error and standard out, or we want to redirect standard error to the same place as standard out, which is going to be captured in our backticks here. We'll chomp off any new lines at the end here, and then same thing again here. Let's say instead of fetch status, we'll go ahead and change that to pull status. So we'll go next, and we'll print out the pull status message unless the previous command here was successful. All right, so we can delete that comment too, and next on to push to origin. So again, let's say pushing to origin maybe in this case, and then we'll change this to say push status. And then again, we don't want to pull any longer, we want to push. We also don't want to go to upstream any longer. Now we want to go to origin. We still want the current branch. We will redirect standard error still to the same place as standard out. Chomp it at the end there. And then we'll also print out our error message here. We'll say next puts our push message, in this case, push status rather, unless the previous command was successful. All right, so we can delete that comment. Last, to end this off, we just want to go ahead and announce success. So we'll go ahead and do that. We can just say puts success. And then let's only show this if the global variable here is set has a successful status to it. So now let's give our program a run and see what happens. Okay, so far so good. Seems like everything's working. The output's a little jumbled up here, so I think we can fix that. What we could do here is definitely after success here, we can put some new lines. We'll also want those, if we end up breaking out of the loop and go into the next element in a given loop here, we'll want to, because we won't have any spaces here in any of these messages. So what we can do here is we can just go ahead and append some new lines here. We'll do that for the other two right there. So if we save it now, let's go back and run our program. Okay, there's our line breaks there. We've got breaks there. So this should be good. We'll have some separation between each of these, so it's a little bit easier to read the program output. Okay, great. Now if you wanted to tweak this to show a little bit of the output from the get commands that's going on, you can definitely do that just real quick. If we just print out push status right here. Okay, we save that, we rerun our program here. We'll see that first failure, but then when we get to push to origin here, we can see that message printed out. Now if you want to show some of the output, you can. You have access to that output. Again, remember backticks, the standard output of running the command is returned from the backticks, so we can store that in this variable. So we can come right here just as an example. The output won't probably look all that great, but if we say puts push status, for example, if we run our program now, when we hit one that works successfully, we'll see the everything up to date method printed out right there, then success. We have that extra space right here. That is coming from the fact that we added some right here. That's why I said the output probably won't look too great, but you can deal with that however you want, adjust it as needed. For right now, I'm just showing it as an example. I'm actually going to get rid of it here. Right, now, of course, it's kind of silly to be chomping the new line off and then adding two of them here. So let's just go ahead and I just wanted to show add these for example for just cleaning up the format here. But I think now let's just go ahead and knowing what we know now, I think we can just go ahead and let's just chop everything after the closing backtick to the end of the line out of here, and we'll just use the single new line that all of these commands should have at the end of their output. Okay, so this is great, and I know we said that this initial implementation of this program was going to be, or it was going to require us to adhere to certain expectations, and I think that's fine. What I don't think is fine is there's actually a hidden expectation here, and it requires us to be in our code directory always if we want to run this program. So for example, if I go to my home directory, if I say Ruby and then I pass it the path to that program, we will see that we are going to start to get some errors because now we are in my home directory and it's only getting the name GoRails, so it's trying to find a directory named GoRails inside of my home directory to change into in this line right here. okay, which is not going to work because it doesn't exist. That's why we're seeing this error message here, okay. So I think what I want to do to get around this is I want to always first change into that code directory from no matter where we are. Okay, so we can say change dir, and then what we can do here is when we pass it this string of the directory name to change into, we can use another method on dir called home. Okay, so let's interpolate dir.home. Okay, and then after that we can just tack on the /code portion here. Okay, and then we'll give that a block so that it runs all of this code within it. Okay, now let's tab everything over or indent everything properly. Okay, so now what we're going to do first is whenever we go to run this program, the process is going to first shift into our code directory from no matter where we are. So for example, we're in my home directory right now. If we rerun this now we will see that it actually works, and we can successfully run the program. It can find the directories because we've changed that process to be running from inside our code directory. And then again, we change that process further into each repository directory to run the commands in this block here. Let's go ahead and remove this announce success comment. So as cool as this is, we still currently have to, make a call to our Ruby interpreter here and then pass the name of our program, which I don't want to necessarily have to do that all the time. So the first thing we can do is at the very top here, let's go ahead and we can add a shebang line here. So we can say pound or hash exclamation point user bin inf and then Ruby. So now we should just be able to pass the path to the program, and we can say code /repo sync.rb, and we get this permission denied error. So this is because we need to make this program executable now. Okay, so let me change into my code directory. Now if we were to list out the long form repo sync.rb, okay, if we look at that file, we don't have execution permissions for this file, so we need to change that. So what we can do is we can use the commod method here, so chmod, and then we can pass it 755, for example, and then the name of the program or the file that we want to set executable permissions on, and we can hit enter on that. And now if we recall our ls command, now we can see that we now have the X for executable here for this file. So the owner has read, write, execute permissions, the group has read and execute permissions, and then all other users have read and execute permissions. Okay, that's what the 755 is for. So now we should just be able to say /repo sync.rb, and there we are, our program's off and running. If we were in a different directory, I'll kill this for now. Let's go to my home directory. We would say code /repo sync.rb, and now we can see that that's working as well. So this is great. We no longer have to first call on our Ruby interpreter and then pass it the name of our program. We can just call the name of our program and execute it. So while that's great, it's still a bit clunky to have to, say like code /repo sync.rb, or like go into our code directory and then say /repo sync. Like it's a bit clunky still, so we can do better. And the way we're going to do better is by making sure our program can be found in our path. Okay, so if we echo $path, okay, we can see here these are all the directories that are going to be searched when we try to run a command in our terminal here. Okay, now these directories are separated by colons, so from the beginning of this all the way up to this colon is one directory it'll search, and then after that colon up to the next directory is another one that it will search. So where we are going to put it is going to be in this directory right here, user local bin. Okay, typically user local bin is where you'll put scripts that don't come, or programs that don't come with your system. That's where I like to put them. But if you look in like user bin, for example, you'll probably see some programs that you're familiar with. And in fact, let's go look real quick. So if I cd into my root directory and then go into user bin, okay, if we ls inside of here, scrolling up through the list, let's go up to the G's, for example. We'll probably see grep in here. Let's see, grep, there's grep. Okay, here's gzip. So these are a lot of the programs that come with your system right here. Here's IRB. Okay, so we could put it here if we wanted to. I'm going to put it in local though. So what we're going to do here is, in order to get our program to be run truly from anywhere and just with a very simple command, we're going to symlink to our program file from a name inside of our bin, user local bin directory. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into my root directory. Okay, and I'm going to cd into user local bin. Okay, the way to do the symlink is we're going to say ln, which is the link command. We'll pass the -s option. Okay, and now the first thing you want to give it is the path to the file that you want to link to. So we want to go into from home directory, we want to go into code, and then we want reposync.rb. Okay, and now that's our path to the file that we want to link to. The next thing that we give it is the name that we want to use as the link. Okay, now we can call this whatever we want. Maybe we just call it repo-sync. Okay, so there it is. Now if we list out the contents of the bin directory here, if we kind of just look for anything called repo, we'll see here that here is our symlink repo-sync, and it is symlinks it is linked to this file here, okay, which is the file that we want. So now what this means for us is that we can be anywhere in our system and call repo-sync just like this, and it will go and run that program. We can be anywhere we want, okay, and we don't have to first invoke the Ruby interpreter and pass it a program name. We don't have to say, you know, / or give it a path to the program. It knows how to find it now, which is awesome. All right, so for less than 30 lines of Ruby code, I'd say this is a pretty nice little program that we have here. It's a short little script that does what we want. It needs probably some improvement. It could use some better error handling stuff, maybe a bit of interactivity. We could display the status of what we're currently doing a little bit nicer. So I think we'll do all that sort of stuff in a follow-up video to this. And also, I work with other people on these projects, and what if they happen to see me doing this command one day or running this program and they're interested in using it? Right now, we don't really have any way to easily share that with them. We'd have to, copy the contents of the file and give it to them and let them, put it in their path so it could be found, which is a bit, clunky. It'd be nice if we had an easier way to share this with them. So we'll look at that in the follow-up video to this as well. And additionally, I think we can try to do a bit more OOP style programming of this thing if we're gonna package this up as something that we're going to share and possibly actively maintain to be used. So with that, I hope you found some inspiration in this to go think about your day-to-day workflow of stuff and see if there's anything you notice that you find very tedious to do, that maybe you could script away some of that pain with a simple Ruby script. So until the next video where we'll take this a bit further, take care, have a great day, and I'll see you next time.